Welcome to Beyond Boundaries, a series of virtual sessions initiated by Arthshila Educational Society to further ideas that foster learning, self expression, and ingenuity. In order to facilitate better understanding of our world and its concerns, we bring articulate speakers from all walks of life on this platform to propagate diverse themes, thoughts, and perspectives. In today's session titled Contextualizing Creativity, Modules of Visual Thinking, Art Teaching and Learning, our speaker, Sharmila Samant, portrays the intricacies of art education. Sharmila Samant is a proficient visual artist, curator, and art educator, a graduate in sculpture from Sir J.J. School of Arts, and diploma in interior design and decoration from Raheja College of Architecture. She was awarded fellowship at the Kanoria Centre for Arts. Her artwork, which has been exhibited globally, incorporates various mediums and forms, including installations, performance, and photography. Sharmila is co-founder of the Arts Collective Open Circle and has served as advisor to G5A Foundation for Contemporary Culture, Creativity, Visual Literacy, and Cultural Awareness. Art First is an organization that radically imagines pedagogy, creativity, visual literacy, and cultural awareness to an inclusive arts education program impacting children, educators, and educational systems. The speaker will converse for about 30 minutes on the topic of her expertise. You may submit questions through the chat box of our YouTube channel. All questions from viewers will be answered collectively by the speaker in the last 15 minutes of the session. We begin. Over to our speaker, Sharmila Samant.
Hello. Thank you, Rupa, for inviting Art First to be a part of this and for such a generous introduction. I also want to thank Ritu Koda for making me a part of Art First. It's been 10 years now, and all the frustrations, blockages, and impediments I experienced as a student, then a teacher, a parent, and as an artist have found an outlet in what we attempt to do at Art First. And then, of course, all of you for taking time out on a Sunday evening from your families and leisure, and to be here and for attending this webinar. To put it very sort of mildly, the situation that we are living in really strange times. The COVID-19 virus has been a game changer, the proverbial curved ball. It has changed the way we live and interact in the world, and as knowledge acquisition modes and modes of social interaction collide, our corporal selves are hidden, and we are only as relevant, or we exist as our online avatars. We exist really virtually now, though, I mean, you could say that from the 90s, we have been, exposed to this virtual lives, but currently since March, we are actually living virtually. I live because you detect my presence on the Facebook, my Instagram feeds, how many likes I have given or received, my WhatsApp forwards, and these can be done by actually a well-programmed bot. As an academic, I'm lecturing online. But as my thoughts and views get more and more digitized, they exist independent of my being here. And if this continues for a fairly long time, then you have enough data and I become irrelevant. A good programmer and the right algorithms can continue being me online, even if I cease to exist. And is that going to be the new normal? The future of disembodied beings. I mean, we are looking at the things that are happening around our country. I think the migrant labors, the way people are being disenfranchised, and their bodies are dying. And it's really things that we have to think about. The lucky few of us who are now accessible, who can access the internet and can be in touch with each other, are not the millions who are out there trying to find their ways back home. As a child, I went to 10 different schools. By the time I was in my 10th grade, it was both a harrowing as well as an exhilarating experience. Some of the years have been divided between two schools in two different states with two different languages. I was able to survive and, quite frankly, thrive in those circumstances. Though at times it seems like a difficult task to keep making new friends, learning new languages and their accompanying gestures, and keeping in touch with old ones and adapting to new challenges that were constantly thrown at me. It was an uphill task. The 70s and 80s, the times were very different. There was no internet, mobile phones, or even social media. If I now undertake a recourse to retrospective theorization of my survival instincts, of those rather difficult personal adjustments, then I think at that time I was surviving because I was employing my creative abilities. And what is this creativity? What do we mean? What do we mean by creativity? Well, let's try to define it, understand it, and then see how that is important as a child for us to be the human beings we then grew up into. It can be roughly thought of as a tendency to generate, recognize, discover, or create ideas, solutions, alternatives, or possibilities that may be useful in solving problems, communicating with others, and entertaining ourselves as well as others. Creative people often have extensive knowledge about things. They are often passionately interested and involved in these things. They have worked on them for years, looked at unusual solutions, know how to seek out advice and the help of other experts, collaborate where required, where their skills are not enough. And they also know how to recognize and choose their mentors. And most importantly, they are capable of taking risks. Although creativity is often associated with the arts, it actually is a vital form of intelligence that drives people across disciplines to discover something new. Creativity can be found in every area of life, from the way you accessorize yourself as you step out of your home, the way you serve food to guests who come into your house, the way you have done your house, to a new way of understanding quantum physics or creating a new app. Creativity is a complex phenomenon. It's multidimensional, and hence it's difficult to measure. It is one of the most difficult concepts to define. Maya Angelou, the versatile American author, actress, she was also a screenwriter, a dancer, a poet, a civil rights activist, also a nightclub singer, suggested that thinking creatively helps foster even greater creativity. She said, and I quote here, "Creativity or talent, like electricity, is something I don't understand, but something I'm able to harness and use. While electricity remains a mystery, I know I can plug into it and light up a cathedral or a synagogue, or even an operating room and use it to help save a life. Or I can use it to electrocute someone." Like electricity, creativity makes no judgment. It can be used productively or destructively. The important thing is to use it. You can't use up creativity. The more you use it, the more you have. I end the quote here. To simplify the understanding of this complex human function we call creativity, let us look at the three criteria the United States Patent Office uses to decide whether an invention can receive patent protection for copywriting of an idea or an invention. The first criterion is originality. What you propose has to be unique. It should have low probability. The second criterion is usefulness. The idea should be valuable or it should work. A solution must, in fact, solve the problem. The third and last criterion is surprise. The idea should be unexpected, or at least non-obvious, as they say in the US patent sort of booklet. A solution that is straightforward derivation from acquired expertise cannot be considered surprising, even if it is original. As we apply these three criteria, we must understand that originality, usefulness, and surprise have to be quantitative, not qualitative features of the idea. Cognitive scientists have long been interested in the thinking processes that lead to creative ideas. The so-called creativity tests are actually measures of the thought processes believed to underlie the creative act. The first one I'll talk about was introduced by Sarnoff-Mednick. It is known as the Remote Associates Test or the RAT. It says that creative process requires the ability to associate ideas that are considered very far apart conceptually. A possible weakness of this test is that its focus on verbal associative habits, meaning that it might be more difficult for, let's say, non-native speakers of English to, fare very well in it. Also, it may not favor those who are more comfortable with visual thinking. They have now come up with a new test, like an add-on, which is called the FRAT, the Functional Remote Associates Test. The second measure is the Unusual Users Task, developed by Joy Paul Guilford. Here, the participant is asked to generate alternative use for a common object. Let's say a shoe, or a brick, or a hairpin. I mean, while I'm talking, think of what a shoe can be besides your, covering your foot, and just besides being your footwear. The capacity to produce unusual uses is but one example of the general cognitive ability to engage in divergent thinking. Divergent thinking, unlike convergent thinking, which converges onto a single best answer or single useful solution, divergent thinking comes up with multiple possibilities that may greatly vary in their ways of usefulness. That is why we cannot use the singular. There is no such a thing as the creative process. It is not mathematical. It is not an answer. Otherwise, we would have had hundreds of Mona Lisas or, hundreds of Marcel Duchamps. Experts also suggest that there are different kinds of creativities, the 4 C's, the 4 models of creativity. The mini C, creativity that consists of personally meaningful ideas and insights that are known only to the self. I mean, I'm going out and, I have not taken my bag. I have a cell phone and I have something else, and I quickly use my sari pallu and make a little potli out of it, and I tuck it. So everything is safe, I can access it. At the same time, I don't have to hold it. Mini C. Little c, creativity. This includes almost everyday thinking and problem solving. This type of creativity helps people solve everyday problems which they face and how they adapt to the changing environments. If it's hot, The AC is not working. There's no electricity. I do this. I just have a book. If I don't have a book, I try something else. A book is not meant for fanning, but it's the little C's for everyday adaptations and how you face everyday problems. Pro C, as the name suggests, professional. It is for professionals who are experts, skilled, and creative in their respective fields. These individuals are creative in their vocation or profession, but they do not necessarily achieve the eminence for their works. And the big C creativity involves creating works and ideas that are considered great. They are the showstoppers in a particular field. This type of creativity leads to eminence and acclaim, and often leads to world-changing creations such as medical innovation. The first time somebody found how to take an ECG without entering the body, you could see how your heart was doing. The artistic achievements, technological advances, the zip disk, these kind of big creative ideas. For example, also the theory of relativity by Albert Einstein. All enable the person to think outside the box imposed by routine thinking, to venture into territory that would otherwise be ignored. Creativity requires that you take risks to venture out where you don't know where you are going. There's a beautiful Indian version of creativity, which we call Jugaad. It is an excellent example of creative impulses, a flexible approach to problem solving that uses limited resources in the most innovative way. I mean, it has now become, over the past 5 or 6 years, it's become like something that is across countries, across universities. I mean, there are people at Harvard, there are people in Columbia who are studying Jugaad, or the idea of Jugaad. Jugaad, as you know, especially for people who are joining us from the south of India, it is a word from Hindi or Urdu or Punjabi that means ensuring that things happen even with the minimal resource, even if they happen by hook or by crook. Jugaad has almost become like a movement involving everyday problems, solving them with a combination of frugal innovation, local intelligence, perhaps bending the rules, norms slightly, being a little illegal, bringing people's creativity and improvisational skills to the surface. There are a number of films, even on YouTube, which tell you of the most amazing Jugaad inventions which have been done by Indians, which we may or may not know. And I would love to share it with you if some of you like, and we could do that after the talk. But I mean, showing these in schools to children and them understanding how simple and how innovative people can be is a great idea of pushing them instead of just introducing them to robotonics. Postmodern knowledge societies place new demands on schools all over the world, on both the learner and the educator to be creative, have the ability to cooperate in group processes and acquire information. This is the expertise that each one of us should master to succeed in life and work in the 21st century. We often hear this in new models of pedagogy, the emphasis on creative learning, thinking, and application. The bad news. The bad news is that there are thousands of schools in all the countries around the world still out there that teach in the same old dull ways, through dry lectures, boring worksheets, and textbooks. The challenge is to get this information out to many more teachers, school administrators, boards, and trustees, policymakers, and others who work with children so that each child has the opportunity to learn in ways harmonious with their unique minds. Dr. Howard Gardner, professor of education at the Harvard University, said that our schools and culture focus most of their attention on linguistic and logical mathematical intelligence. We esteem the highly articulate or logical people of our cultures. The theory of multiple intelligences was developed by him in 1983. It suggests that traditional notion of intelligence based on IQ testing is far too limited. Instead, Dr. Gardner proposed that there are 8 different kinds of intelligences to account for a broader range of human potential, both in children and in adults. I'm going to list all these 8 intelligences, and it's up to you to figure out, which is your best way of working through situations. There is the musical intelligence. It's called music smart, which includes your awareness of musical sounds, tones, and rhythms. Naturalistic intelligence, nature smart, includes your awareness of trees, mountains, flowers, and other elements found in nature. Interpersonal intelligence, people smart, includes your ability to relate to those around you, understand their motivations, their goals, and their feelings. Intrapersonal intelligence, self-smart, includes your ability to understand yourself, your strengths, your own weaknesses, your goals, and your motivations. Logical or mathematical intelligence, number or reasoning smart, includes your ability to reason, think critically and analytically, and your understanding of complex mathematical concepts. Linguistic intelligence, word smart, includes your ability to appreciate language and use it effectively to accomplish goals. Bodily or kinesthetic intelligence, body smart, includes your athletic ability and being aware of your body. Visual or spatial intelligence, this is my favorite. Picture smart includes your ability to visualize, remember images and details, and an awareness of your surroundings. Dr. Gardner, however, said that we should place equal attention on individuals who show gifts in other intelligences. So the artists, the architects, filmmakers, musicians, naturalists, the entertainers, the engineers, the designers, dancers, therapists, entrepreneurs, and others who enrich the world that we live in. Far from encouraging the pursuit of art, we must face the fact that unfortunately the educational institutions have been steadily discouraging young people and young students and creative minds from taking to the arts, or at the best, permit them to consider the arts to be a useful hobby or leisure activity. Being an artist, I emphasize and transact with the world through my understanding that comes about primarily with my visual intelligence. There's a brilliant book by this lady called Amy Herman. It's called Visual Intelligence, Sharpen Your Perception, Change Your Life. It is an excellent read. And if some of you are interested, you must get, especially the teachers, you should read this book because it will really help you with your students. Herman shows that anyone can hone into their usually neglected visual intelligence quotient and can uncover the skills, the secrets, and the solutions that have been hiding in plain sight, and use these to transform their households, their businesses, communities, and even their own lives. In the globalized consumerist world today, we face the danger of losing our unique syncretic cultural identity. One of the reasons for this is the growing distance between the arts and the people at large. in a majority of the educational institutions, the arts are often relegated as tools for enhancing or decorating the premises on public occasions like festivals, Independence Day, Founders Day, Annual Day, dramatics, or during an inspection of the school progress and working, etc. On most of these occasions, the works on display are done by the art teachers, and it is usually kitsch, craft-based, and catered to a popular notion of beautiful. Works by students are often looked at as lacking, incomplete, or not fit to grace the occasions. I mean, these are occasions where everybody comes to school and it's a time to show off. And that is why children's works seem lacking. Before or after that, the arts are abandoned for the better part of a child's school life. And she is herded towards the subjects that are perceived as being more worthy of attention. In many schools which I have gone to, in secondary school, in the secondary sections, art is not taught. The art subject is sort of used by subject teachers to not teach them art. I mean, this happens everywhere. These young learners then are kept away from any kind of creative expression. When children enter primary schools, they do not enter tabula rasa. Young learners make sense of themselves and the world in the way that they are far more visibly constructivist than older learners. They come with a relatively large understanding of aesthetic knowledge that comprises of visual images, local music and songs, rhythm and body movements, which have percolated from their homes and surroundings, from observing rituals, ceremonies, and other cultural practices, both traditional and popular. These young learners are not only creative as thinkers, but undoubtedly critical as well. They're capable of expressing and experimenting with different media, different material, and different forms of art. It is through this that they explore the natural and social environment around them, as well as their own emotions and development. They display a remarkable degree of either inventive or insightful thinking, irrespective of their different socio-cultural background. If they are allowed, they demonstrate a tendency to use the elements and materials of art spontaneously, without any preconceived ideas about them, even at a primary level. The way art is taught in most schools is unfortunately like rote learning. Teacher draws on the board, children copy, teacher gives them or teaches them the skills to fill in color and to draw as close to what has been drawn on the board as possible. Where and when then can they express when modes of expression itself are restrictive and stifled? I'm going to express this, how we as children were taught art. Unfortunately, there is this very beautiful essay by Bishwa Kalyanrat, a personality who has been an influencer for the millennials. Fairly sort of, nice story. After graduation in biotechnology from IIT Kharagpur, no less, in 2012, Biswa worked in graphic design, advertising, and software. He quit his job at Oracle in 2014 to become a full-time stand-up comedian. Some of you might have seen him on YouTube. And now during the COVID-19 pandemic, he, along with Samay Raina and Vidit Gujarati, have been streaming online chess matches. And they're trying to popularize playing chess. It is Bishwa's take on the Macaulay education system that we are the inheritors of, where he holds up a mirror to art training that many of us parents and teachers of now were given in our schools. I would like to share this video with you. Rohina, can you? We've all made these kind of landscapes. We've made these scenery drawings. What you will see now is how creative teaching or teaching creatively can change the way children look at their surroundings and they actually express and not just copy. Teaching for creativity is defined as forms of teaching that are intended to develop young people's own creative thinking or behavior. While teaching creatively may be interpreted as more concerned with effective teaching, teaching for creativity may perhaps be interpreted as having learner empowerment as its main objective. How does one empower the learner? Make her feel the relevance, ownership, control, and innovation in the knowledge that has been transacted to her. Though the images you see are from art classes, the questions and observations that children come up with are applicable across subjects. Maths can be made exciting. Literacy developed as a set of keys, unlocking a whole range of pleasures and emotional journeys. Science experienced as a passion for inquiry, discovery, and experimentation. Technology can be an intensely focused activity involving problem solving, frustrations, and satisfaction. And the arts can be valued as opportunities for expression. Ensuring the relevance of the curriculum and pedagogy to learners leads to ownership of knowledge, learning processes, and resulting skills and understandings. As their engagement with learning is directly related to their interests at hand. A creative teacher has to inculcate the ability to use improvisational elements within their lessons. She has to live in the moment, act spontaneously, courageously, as well as confidently, taking the ideas which have arisen from the student learners and can change the lesson to finish it in another and arguably better way. This definition of creative pedagogy reflects both a creative teaching practice and the widely recognized tenets of effective learning facilitation. It also highlights a crucial aspect of creative teaching, the capacity to be creative within one's teaching. In a creative learning environment, the children are provided with experiences which are rich, and their active role in learning is emphasized. Interaction is an essential part of such a learning process, making learning itself a social activity. So it is not just one way where the teacher speaks and the student only, listens and obeys. Creative environments support children's imagination and inner motivation. In addition, the creative atmosphere is permissive. These elements also create a potential for group activity. According to research, the need to support children's creativity is obvious. Children's creative development should be considered on two levels. It's not just the individual sort of creativity of each student, but the group creativity of the whole class. Here, I would like to give you an example of Dipti Gupta, who has been a part of the Art First sort of pedagogical experience at the DPS in Patna. Dipti did this brilliant project where she had worked with students, and with her students, she kind of took them to the Yamuna, which is in the Agra, which flows through Agra. And what she did was there were parts of the river which were really dirty, and they looked like, you must have seen rivers like this everywhere. And she then sort of came up with this project which was called Vasiyat, I Sign a Will, where she focused on the idea that we have to be responsible for the pollution of our rivers. We have to be responsible for the lack of the plant coverage in the regions that we live in. So she was talking about ecology, she was talking about recycling, she was talking about cultural practices, and all through this brilliant project where children became the doers. So they started collecting flowers, they started the dried flowers, then they learned, like, from botany, they learned how to find the seeds, dry the seeds, then they designed beautiful packages, and with these packages, they sort of sent the seeds back to people who were around them, who then planted them and grew them from these flowers, which would otherwise have just polluted the river. So, I mean, it's a brilliant project, and it is a creative teacher who then has really creative students. So I think we are almost at the end. So I would say that schools should encourage creative thinking and expression, both in their students and in their teachers. The children's curiosity and open-mindedness should find opportunities that can be expressed. Learners have to be active and have critical discussions instead of drill exercises and standardized testing. Pupils become less creative when they experience the pressure of conventionality. Teaching creatively and teaching for creativity together will generate creative learning. And these creative learners can then create a better society. Thank you. Shraddha, are there questions, or how should we proceed?
Yes, ma'am, there are questions. If you can look at your chat box, please, you'll find them.
Okay, let me try. Okay, yes, I see them. Are we late? I mean, have we crossed time?
No, ma'am, that's not a problem. Please take the questions.
Okay. Let me just. I'm looking at the questions. I mean, I'm looking at, inspired being pros at Jugaad. We are not still creative about integrating subjects while teaching in schools. Any insights? I think one of the most important thing is that, unfortunately, the teachers also don't have freedom. I think the way we have to finish portions, we have to, finish a curriculum within a stipulated time is something that we could look at. Change the way our education system works. And so, that is one of the ways of integrating what a child wants to do into the subject that they need to learn. The way it works in schools is that botany is taught But if a child wants to grow a plant, it can do it only within the 10 minutes of a 30-minute class, which they have. We don't, I mean, but to grow a plant, you need something like 3 weeks. But we don't have that kind of time. So we have to look at time that children spend in schools in a different way. And the teachers should be left free to realize what their student needs are and how they can benefit the student, rather than just tell them to finish a particular curriculum within a stipulated time. I'm looking at, does that answer your question? I mean, this is really tough, you don't know who the question was from. I guess this is some of the things that we face. So, Art First came out with these books, which were not only meant for the child and the teacher, but they were also meant to educate the parent. The Art First books were one of our attempt to actually even educate parents who, though very interested and keen on wanting to give a different kind of art education to a child, and or understand that curriculum themselves. So I guess as a parent, you'll have to really take up these things, and the internet is a good resource. You can write to people like Arthshila or to Art First itself and ask for books. There are a number of books which are available online, and if you like, we could help you with a list of them. It is quite simple. You will observe children, and if you don't try to impose yourself on what the child should do, but let the child themselves reveal which intelligence category it falls under, you will very easily understand. There are kids who sing very well, but there are parents who think that singing is not a main subject. There are children who are very good at making things, but then if they don't like math, then parents think that they are no good. So, I mean, if you observe the child, both the teacher and the parent, they will these are described things, so you can very easily understand the 8 kind of intelligences. It's by just observing the child and see in which direction they normally like to work. That is a very nice question. How important is the skill to draw and paint in learning art as means of appreciation and self-expression? Well, skill is very important for an artist. For people who decide to be an artist, it is very important that they imbibe the skill. But to appreciate and for self-expression, skill is definitely not needed. That is what I feel. And, skill comes about by understanding. It's not like it cannot be developed. If a child understands viscosity, if a child understands water mixing, if a child understands certain things about, how to use a pencil, they will be able to develop the skill on their own. The problem with parents and sometimes teachers is that they have a preconceived notion as to how the artwork of the child should look, which is neither about self-expression nor about expressing skill. Because if the kind of skill that a parent or a teacher wants is the only way of expression, is the only way of making a drawing or a painting, then nothing beyond, the whole of modernism could not have been allowed. People who knew how to paint very well decided to paint differently. People who knew how to sculpt very well decided to sculpt differently, because it was about expression, and it was about the times that they were living in. And that is why art is what it is today. So, skill is a deceptive thing. I don't think it is important at all. It can be learned, it can be easily sort of imbibed, but it is not necessary. For me, yes. For me, visual arts and development of life skills is, as I said, I feel it went together. And when I look at children, when I go into these various schools, and when I see children expressing themselves, children coming out of their little shells, which they have been put into by their peers, sometimes parents, sometimes teachers, then visual arts helps them to come out of it and helps them develop these very life skills of communicating, of interpersonal relationships, of being bold, of taking risks. And that is what life skills are about. So I think there is a definite correlation between visual arts and the development of life skills. What is the correct approach? I guess as a parent, you will have to look and listen to the child. A child will tell you what the drawing or the painting or what they've done is about. And even if you can't see it, believe the child when they say it. I think that is the correct approach of accepting an appreciation and looking at a different point of view that the child is bringing to the drawing, even if you can't either decipher or see it. I will not take this question about the eclectic and obscure of simply, about enjoying an artwork. It is something that I always say, that to appreciate art, you need to really spend a lot of time with artists, and art theory and history. Then you begin to, it's the question of amount of time that you spend. I think from the age of 1, or maybe even smaller than 1, the best age is when they start speaking, when they start walking. How are we doing with time?
Sharmila, we're okay with time. You can carry on.
Yeah, see, the thing is, some of these questions are very specific, and, they are about art first and about lesson planning and things like that, which I don't think are appropriate for a group session like this. And if those questions can be forwarded to us at Art First, then I can definitely take them and reply to them individually.
Yeah, they can give out our email address, and they can give us.
Yeah, you could sort of take me off and share the last slide, which has our email address and everything.
Yeah. Are you done with do you want to take any more questions?
I have.
Okay.
I've taken.
All right.
Oh, I just saw this. I'm sorry. I thought that everybody is looking at the questions, and so I was just answering the questions and not reading the questions out.
It's all right. I think we did okay. Shraddha, you want to take over?
We'd like to thank Art First and Sharmila ma'am in particular for this eye-opening session. It not only taught us just about art, but about education and learning in its totality. So we're really thankful to everybody at Art First, especially Ms. Ritu Kora, Ms. Sharmila Samant, Ms. Rohina Thapar, and everybody at Art First who's helped to put together this presentation. Arthshila is extremely grateful. Thank you.
Thank you, Shraddha.
Thank you, Shraddha.
Bye-bye. Thanks.